What's going on, everyone? This is your first time tuning in. My name is Brent, and this is Turbocharged Hobbies. Today, I want to do a quick video just kind of going over some tips and tricks for anyone that's going to be swapping out your battery ends or possibly your ESC ends. So, I'm actually swapping most of my cars over from the Traxxas plug to the IC5 style plug. A lot of that is because the Traxxas patent makes it a lot more difficult to find batteries with Traxxas end on them, and you can't just buy the ends by itself to solder on anymore. So, like, finding charger leads like that with Traxxas ends is very difficult, and I'm not really a big fan of the Traxxas batteries. The chargers aren't bad, but I've just not had good luck with the batteries, so I'd rather be able to stick to like these cheap batteries. I got these, from Amazon, and I think they were only about like 40 bucks a piece or something. I mean, and they've been good. So, first thing I want to cover though is, for one, this isn't a soldering tutorial or anything. I'm decent at soldering, but I'm no expert. But I just want to give some tips and tricks that'll help anyone else that's doing this. One is the solder. If you have a soldering station, that's best, really. Um, I've seen a lot of people claim that they just can't solder and say that, they've tried and they just can't do it. They're not capable of, doing a quality solder joint. But I think a lot of that has to do with people that use the cheap $20, soldering irons you can get from Lowe's or Walmart or whatever. Um, they just don't get hot enough. So something like this with an adjustable temperature makes it a lot easier. I think these run about like 80 bucks at Hobby Town last time I checked. This is a Track Power TK950. Obviously, like I mentioned before, but if you've never watched one of my videos, I'm not sponsored by anyone, so this is just my personal opinion. So next thing I want to talk about here is when you go to swap. I've been guilty of doing this myself before, just not thinking, and you just snip the end right off. Well, you'll end up arcing your battery that way, and being a LiPo, that could end in a bad day, so you never want to do that. But with the Traxxas ones, I'm not going to cut them at all. It's kind of the whole reason I'm making this. I'm sure everyone does this whenever they change their ends out, but I just want to show what I do and what I've found is easiest, I guess. So you see, I've already done one side. The good thing with these IC5s is they actually say right on the side, positive and negative. So whenever to get this off, you need something to push that out. So I have a little nut driver here for like scale hardware. That's what I'm going to use. You have to be really careful. Like I've used like hex bits or whatever. You have to be really careful doing stuff like that, because I have slipped and stabbed myself in the hand before, and I promise you it did not feel good. So I'm going to use some pliers to make this a little bit easier, and hopefully keep me from stabbing myself again. And I'm just going to put it right there on the end, and then push down. Depending on how new the batteries are, it can be very difficult to get these out. There's no clip or anything that holds them in on these Traxxas plugs. So the next thing here, another thing that'll really help with soldering is having some of these like helping hands. These I really need to solder some, or like hot glue some weights or something to, because they're just not really heavy enough to hold it in place. So I'm just going to put it here and then heat it up here. And there you go. Clean my tip back off. So there's not very much sticking out. So I'm going to actually trim some of the insulation back. I hope you can hear me well. I do have a mic, but I was getting a lot of feedback wearing the mic, so I'm going to try it without the mic again. I know before it's been kind of difficult to hear me in some of the other videos, so I am trying to get better, making sure I speak loudly. Only problem is I work night shift, so a lot of times I'm filming these late at night, early in the AM. Today it's pretty early, so I'm trying to get this done while I can and speak as loud as I can. So the next thing is, the good thing about these two is, like, if you start with this one, it'll kind of, it's got that flat side, so it will sit when you solder the negative side on. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my pliers and just lightly clamp them. And you want to make sure that this doesn't touch that, which it'd be kind of difficult, but it could happen. You want to make sure before you solder anything on, you have your dust cover on, and also added some shrink wrap to put over it as well. So I'm going to add a little solder to my tip here. And then I'm going to tent this wire here. You want to, I like to put it underneath, and then I try to add this. Once it gets hot enough, you'll see it start sucking into the wire, which that's what you want. You don't want to go overboard though. See, got a little glob that come off. I'm going to wipe that off. So, alright, that looks pretty good. So, you also, let's put this here. See what I'm saying? That these little helping hands just don't weigh enough to hold it down. I know it's probably hard to see, but I have actually added some solder. You want to put a little bit of solder into here. I like to heat it up right before I stick the wire on. There we go. I don't remember what solder I used in this because this was already done. You want to be careful because you don't want to add too much heat. And I'm going to put a glove on to help me. This is a little difficult because I really want to, I need to swap it around like that. Just kind of work it back in there and it will go. Oh, it's kind of a pain, but definitely way easier than the Traxxas ones. Oh my gosh, soldering onto them little tabs is so difficult. Yeah, trying to solder onto these is so difficult because you can't have the solder go past, has a line right there. You don't, not allowed to have the solder go past that because then your battery won't plug in right. And then if this is too thick, it don't want to fit in. I always hated soldering these. These are so much easier. Now we're going to give it some time to cool off, and then we'll slide the heat shrink over, which it's already shrunk some because of the heat that it takes to get that joint good. I know the lighting over here isn't as great. There we go. Yeah, I got into the plug just a little bit with the iron, but it's not a big deal. I just trim that way with a razor blade. So I'm pretty much going to do the same thing on my X-maxx as well. I'm just going to push these pins out and then solder the new ones on. Now that's going to be a little bit more tricky because I'm going to try to do it with it still in the truck. I think that pretty much covers the majority of this. I just wanted to give a couple little tricks and tips on soldering, especially, you know, I was a fan of the Traxxas plugs for a long time, but it's just getting to the point so difficult to find. You know, your battery options are pretty limited now. There's still a few brands that make stuff. Got a little glob from the negative here. Add a little heat, get that to drop down. I could file it down too. That's the other good thing I like. Oh, that's the other good thing I like. Oh. That'll be good on film. There we go. I'm just going to slide that one over. Add a little heat to it. I can find the lighter. Now you can see, looks a lot better, nice and strong. And like I said, I'll just trim that little bit down there and then this will pop right on. Y'all forgot to tell me to turn this off. There we go. So I now officially have a set of packs for my second X-maxx. Now if you don't follow me on Instagram, you probably don't know that I have a second X-maxx. But I do. I'll show that to you all real quick. You just give me a second. So here's my second one. We'll get to them at some point, but so here's the other X-maxx. Be some videos coming up soon on this. Still gotta take it out. I haven't driven it yet, but appreciate everyone watching. If you like the video, you can just give me a like. I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you want to follow me, just search for Turbocharged Hobbies. I have Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Check me out. Give me a follow. Really appreciate it. You all have a good night.